It's time to talk about the tech foundations for my digital card game Manafront. Let's go. Let's speak about Manafront, which is my digital card game, and you can think of it as a sort of alternatives to Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering Arena. One of the main design constraints that we had in the beginning is that you would be able to play Manafront on a mobile phone. And to be able to play to mobile, you need to develop and you need to think about some technical consideration. How are you going to do this implementation and what's the architecture in the background? In any competitive card game, what you have is that you have your own device and your opponent has another device, and those two devices communicate with each other. In some game like Hearthstone, at least from my research, what they did was that the two clients communicated directly in between each other. This has several advantages, especially from a monetary point of view, because the developer doesn't need to maintain much infrastructure, less people that need to develop, but this peer-to-peer communication, this client-to-client communication direct, has also some drawbacks. And I didn't want to go in that direction because I also thought it would be more complicated. What I have now is that I have a server that kind of acts as a judge in between these two client action. Server is a sort of authoritative judge that validates the action. Yes, the player can do this action. For example, it's his turn, and then it can propagate the update, what happened to the game after that action. This adds several benefits. For example, you don't need to have the complicated game logic inside of each client, but just the server can have. Especially in the beginning phases during the playtesting, I can change the rules just in the server and I don't need to care about updating the clients. Also, the client doesn't need to be very heavy, hundreds of megabytes and gigabytes, but it can be quite thin because it doesn't have the logic and a lot of things is driven by the server. Also, the server, being the judge of the game, can enforce things like turn duration, validation of moves, and also obscure certain information of the game that the client shouldn't be allowed to see. The other architectural foundation is that the game needs to be live. You want to see each action and the results of those actions live while your opponent does it. And to do this, we need to maintain a persistent connection in between the client and the server. We use something called WebSockets, which is basically a persistent tunnel in which you send message continuously in between the client and the server. And this is quite important because it's usually not what happens on website. Which brings us to the third foundational architectural decision, is that Manafront is going to be a web app. Basically, it's going to be a website. I don't want player to have to download a game, potentially hundreds of megabytes or gigabytes, but what they could do is just go to a website and start playing. Whenever somebody wants to play, they can just take their device out and start playing. And these are the three technical architectural foundation of Manafront, the card game. We're going to have a server being the judge. We're going to have persistent connections so the updates can be distributed live, and everybody can join just with their phone going to a website. They don't need to download the client, but this can be immediate and frictionless. Interested to hear what you think and if you have any questions. And up until next time, follow along with this devlog. Bye bye.
Cards on the table, rules in the air. Balancing this game, it's a wild affair. Manafront's a puzzle, but we're pulling hair. Play tasting chaos, who even cares?